All right, we've got all the tech side set up. We are super excited. Alex and I are incredibly humbled to welcome Adam Rundle of Clever Profits. For background, I've been following Adam and his co-founder, Brian Wynn, for a couple of years now, and their YouTube channel has just been blowing me away with incredible content. So if you're watching this, you get any value from Adam, please go subscribe to their YouTube channel. Some of the best content I'm seeing out there to make it easy for owners and founders to be able to simply understand their numbers and their business finances. Adam, I say that with all sincerity, and I'm super excited to have you here with us.
Alex, thanks for having me. Will, thanks for having me. Appreciate you both. Will, that was kind words for you to say, and I hope we can live up to the hype you've created, but happy to help where I can and happy to answer any questions and be a resource.
No, I mean it. I mean it so much because I was watching a video the other day, actually, and you were diving into owner's discretionary earnings, and I never heard of it termed as ODE before. And for those of you that are listening, probably like me, like, what does that mean? Adam just broke it down, and really, it was this great video on how so many of us aren't even including, Alex and I help people with this every day, which is, are you actually getting the true number that you want to be taking home? And are you accounting for that into your plan, and then building around that versus just what's the total revenue I need to make? What can I make revenue wise? And so, Adam, I'm really excited to bring you here. I know this is stuff that you work with every single day, but I'd love to just start with kind of what got you into this world. How did you, I was reading your bio, you're from South Africa. I saw that you were a rugby coach, helping like rugby teams. Two things I don't really, or not two things, but rugby I don't associate with financial services, but like how has this journey kind of come to fruition?
Yeah, so I'm originally from South Africa. I'm born and bred there, and I studied accounting. So I studied, like most people, just to become an accountant. And love rugby, and I played rugby, then coached rugby for a long time. And I had dreams and aspirations of becoming a professional rugby coach. That was what I wanted to do with my life. And then I met my to-be wife, and we traveled a couple of times to the US. She's got a lot of family here, friends here. She spent some time here when she was younger, and just realized that there's some, alternative options out there, and things could be a little bit different. And back in end of 2016, we moved to the US, just outside Washington, DC. We live in Annapolis. Still coach rugby though. I coach rugby at the Naval Academy. I'm actually wearing a Naval Academy top here. I actually coach rugby at the Naval Academy just to tickle the itch, and just to keep myself doing the thing I love to do. But yeah, I was very fortunate, got here and met some pretty incredible people. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know Conversions.ai, or Jarvis is called. They're founders and owners, a guy named Dave Rogamoser, and got two business partners, JP Morgan and Chris Hull. And they actually were my first ever clients. They lived in Annapolis and could be friendly with people we knew here. And they were running Entrepreneur Alliance back then, and they had just started to launch Proof, which was like their first software thing they launched before they got to Jarvis. And they were the first ever client, and they just connected me to a lot of people in the industry, this online digital marketing world, coaches, consultants, and bumbled around trying to help people for a while on their finances, and then met Brian Nguyen and realized that together we could go a lot further, and we got together, and a couple of years later, here we are with a pretty cool team of people around us and some great clients and just having fun.
Cool. Super excited, Adam, to have you here. And it's just kind of crazy how the world works sometimes, right? You kind of end up 6 years later. I don't know if you
probably should be like, I wanted to be in Australia coaching rugby right now. Like when we were, not that I don't want to be in South Africa, I love South Africa, but we were like, we wanted to do something different, and we were trying to go to Australia, and we tried hard to go to Australia. Like every door closed in our face, and then we tried for 1 week to come to the US, and every door opened. So I was like, okay, well, the Lord's telling me to come here. So came here, and the rest is history, they say.
Man, well, we're happy to have you here and the work that you're doing, Adam. And the reason that, we wanted to bring you on was, one, you have this expertise. Two, I really believe that you have such an incredible way of breaking things down for people that for most, I think most entrepreneurs don't go into business to be CFOs of their companies. They just have a passion, they have an interest. And so to have someone like you who's able to break down these concepts and say, hey, let's get a hold on this stuff is just so powerful. And I'd love to just start from a basic place of, you work with lots of business owners, everyday entrepreneurs, just on the regular thing. What are some of the first few things that or what are some of the most common things where you see people just kind of getting it wrong right off the bat when they're, let's say, in their first year of business? Just some of the simple things that maybe we can make people aware of. Like, I see this over and over and over again. Maybe it's entity setup, maybe it's, not paying themselves correctly. What are some of those things that you see people are struggling with in that first 1 or 2 years of business?
Good question. It's obviously people struggle with all sorts of things. I think like trying to make things too complicated is probably one of the big areas I look at and go, you don't need to make this so complicated. We all have some kind of knowledge of the accounting world, or we've heard about it. It's a complex world. There's reams and reams of accounting codes and tax codes out there, and everyone thinks that that's the way it must be. You got to follow all these different things, and yes, that may be true, but those things apply to big businesses. So much of our tax code and so much of the accounting world is geared for big businesses. It's geared for the Teslas of the world. It's not geared for clever profits with 30 odd people making some money. It's not geared for that. And so just trying to remove some of that complexity and say, just think about this thing super simply. I've often say is, business has been around forever. There's someone selling something forever. Okay. When human beings could fathom that I could trade one thing for another, and how long ago that was, who cares? We've been doing it. We've been doing business. And the world is the way it is because of business. It's trading ports and all that, it's just because of business. And tax codes didn't exist then, and there were no double entry accounting systems, and GAAP principles, or GAAP as they call it here, and whatever it is. Like, those things didn't exist, but people made money. People did a good job. Okay, and so let's go back to those principles and go back to thinking pretty simply like that: money coming in, money going out. Identifying the key drivers in your business, what truly makes your business work and operate, and focusing on those 80-20 principle. Let's spend all our time focusing on the things that actually make a difference. And the more time you focus on trying to save money on taxes, or trying to focus on whether this thing goes there in this bucket or that bucket, you're wasting your time, because that's not the needle mover. The needle mover is the drivers. And there's actually only two drivers in any business, and it's client acquisition and fulfillment. It's what they are. If you can't get people to pay you money, you don't have a business. If you can't deliver what you said you're going to deliver, you don't have a business. The rest is, I'm not saying it's unimportant, but it's just not important. It's just not going to move the needle. And so spend way less time thinking about that, and spend way more time thinking about those two things. If you're making decent money, you're gonna create a tax problem. So take some of the money that you've made, because you're making decent money, and pay to solve the tax problem, i.e. speak to a tax consultant or accountant and solve the tax problem. Don't try and, if you're not making a lot of money, you don't have a tax problem. So don't solve a tax problem, because it doesn't exist. Solve a client acquisition problem or fulfillment problem. And then when you're making money, then go solve the tax problem. And the tax problem, everyone wants to know what to do on taxes. There's only one way to solve, there's only one way to solve your tax problem, is pick up the phone and speak to someone who understands taxes and tell them what's happening, and they will help you. It's like, YouTube's gonna maybe help you a little bit. I'm not gonna help you at all. I don't even deal with taxes, but that's the way to do it. And if you can't afford $1,000, let's say you can't afford $1,000 to invest time and effort into solving your tax problem, you don't have a tax problem. Because if you can't afford it, you don't have a tax problem. So ignore it. Go solve the other problems, and when that problem arises, go solve that one. And that's the simplicity, I would say. It's like, entities are important. Of course, entities are important. You can change entities. If it's that important and it's got that much of an issue at some point, then just change it at that point. And okay, maybe that cost you a couple of grand here or there if you could have got it right in the beginning. But if you spend more time on client acquisition fulfillment, you wouldn't care. You would have a bigger business, so you'd be like, oh, okay, it cost me a couple of grand to do that. You've probably still spent the time in the right place initially. And so, I would say that the type of business entity you have and the tax plan you have is not going to make any more money.
So I'm super curious, Adam. There are a lot of people who get that we've talked to, and even in our own experience, that say, "Oh, I think my accountant is quote unquote working for me. I think they're good, but I'm not really sure." And I've also seen some people get some really crappy advice from accountants too. In your mind, how does someone judge? Is the advice that I'm getting any good? Like what in your mind helps to say, yeah, this person's doing a decent job, or man, this person's just being super lazy and they're just churning numbers through to I don't know, they're not ultimately serving the business owner. What are the things that you would caution business owners to look for to make sure that the person they're going to is actually doing what's in their best interest?
Yeah, okay, so I would say there's two kind of lenses you got to look at this through, and this I'm going to answer like there's three operational areas we work with clients. Okay, so we have a compliance, strategy, and advisory. Compliance is like do it right, keep the IRS happy, file your taxes. Well, strategy is like how do I grow and scale and make this thing better, and then advisory is usually kind of like high level deal stuff. I'm trying to grow, I'm trying to acquire something or be acquired, or a high level funding pieces. It's kind of the advisory world. If you're listening to this and you feel like you need advisory support, then you should be talking to an accountant or someone to help you do that, because there's enough money in the system that you don't need a YouTube channel to help you solve that problem. You need a human being. Okay. If that's not your world, which, I mean, we're not even there yet. We're a decent sized business. We're not trying to think about mergers or acquisitions yet. Hopefully we'll get there, but we're not thinking about that. To us, the world is compliance and strategy. And so your accounting solution needs to give you both. It needs to ensure that you are compliant, but it also needs to ensure that you can use this to be strategically sound and do the things you want to do. And one of the biggest problems that I think is out there is that most people, it's almost impossible to do both at the same time. If anyone understands marketing, and maybe I'm talking to the wrong people here, but marketing, media buying and copywriting are different things. You're trying to get to the same outcome, but they're very different things. A very good media buyer doesn't mean that they're a good copywriter. A very good copywriter doesn't mean they're a very good media buyer. Okay. There are probably very few people in the world out there that are really good at both. Okay. It's the same thing in the accounting world. If you have an accountant who is tax focused, they're a compliance driven accountant, which means a lot of what they're going to give you is compliance driven. That's not a bad thing. It's just what it is. It's coming from that angle. If you've got an accountant who's very strategically driven, a lot of what they're going to give you is strategically driven. It's not necessarily going to be compliance driven. That's the first lesson I learned, is that I don't like taxes. I don't deal with taxes. I'm a strategy guy. And I'm giving all my clients this information, but it's very one-sided. It's very one-sided information because I'm just going strategy, 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 strategy. And that's why I love Brian so much, is Brian came on and I said, Brian, hey, you just do taxes. I kind of only want to do strategy. If we do this thing together, we're going to get somewhere. And so we both had to give up a lot to get to the midpoint where we feel like it's good. Like, okay, the chart of accounts, very technical now, doesn't look the way I want it to look because it's got some more compliance things in it. And he's like, well, the chart of accounts doesn't look the way I want it to look. It's got all your strategy stuff in it. But we've kind of hit the middle point. And so that would be the first thing, is you want to make sure that you get a good, you can go with one or the other, but then take one or the other. Don't speak to a tax accountant and expect to get a ton of strategy advice. Don't speak to a strategist and try to get a touch of tax advice, okay? Know what you're getting, know who you're dealing with, and take what they give you and use it, or try and find a bit of both if you can, and understand a bit about it. That's probably the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is your intuition is way more powerful than you think it is. And you will know when someone's talking about something that is not a needle mover. And as I was talking about the needle movers, you're both nodding your heads away, and I've yet to speak to someone who doesn't nod their head. I never came up with this. I've never invented this thought. This is the way business works, whether you like it or not. Like, this is the way business works. Okay, so it's intuitive. It's obvious. It hits you in the face. It's like, no duh. So you follow that. So if you're sitting talking to someone and you're going like, I don't understand how this is actually going to move the needle. I don't understand how this is actually going to make any difference. Follow that and then ask the questions. And then if super practical, make sure you get the numbers. Ask people for the numbers. You want to see the numbers. You want to, what does my P&L say? What does my balance sheet say? Open up your bank account, do the numbers match. You can do your own little bit of pieces there. Like, does this relatively look accurate or not? This guy told me I made 50 grand in revenue last month. Well, what does my Stripe account say? Or, if I look at my bank, did I kind of get 50 grand or not? Like, how did that work? And little things like that will just give you some insights into whether what they're presenting is fair and valid. And then what they say is then driven what I said earlier about tax or non-tax or strategy, and then using your intuition, because it's a lot more powerful than most people think.
Yeah, I think that's you bring up a great point, which is, I think a lot of people look for an accountant or a bookkeeper, and you guys even write this on your website that, they're not going to solve all your problems. They solve a specific problem in your business or help you with a specific problem. And to think that you're going to get everything in one person is, it's like a unicorn, right? Finding that one person can solve it all, right? And that's part of what you guys have done to build Clever Profits, is to create the unicorn and a team, so you can address all those problems. And I think that's just great advice to be able to tell people, look, just like you would find a marketer in your business or a salesperson in business, it's really hard for them to do both at the same time. You're just creating roles for people, and I think that's really great advice. And Adam, I wanted to go back to something, because you brought up the two needle movers, which are client acquisition and fulfillment. And I think where a lot of people struggle, that we find with, and we've struggled with this in the past too, is really honing in on what does it mean to acquire a client, and then what does it mean when you say client acquisition cost? I think a lot of people don't really take into account the true costs of acquiring a client. You have some great YouTube videos on this. I think a lot of people, are like, well, I spend $1,000 on Facebook ads and someone turns into a client, therefore my client acquisition cost is $1,000. And we know that from what you've taught on your YouTube videos, there's more to take into account. I'd love if you would mind just kind of how you look at client acquisition costs.
Yeah, I mean, it's, if you've ever opened up a contract before, the first thing they do in every contract is define all the terms, and you agree on the definition of something so that there's no more ambiguity along the way. And I think client acquisition cost is one of those. If there was this universal agreed definition, it would probably be a lot easier, because every person will define it differently, especially if you're speaking to a salesperson or marketing person or business owner. They're all going to look at it a little bit differently. So this is not about right or wrong. It's not about, oh, you doing it wrong or you defining it wrong. No one cares. I don't care what the definition is. I care about how you use it, and is it helpful for you, and actually giving you information that is helpful. Call it what you want, add what you want, take out what you want, make it useful. That's what matters. And so that's one part there. And there's, how you skin a cat. Like, we look at it a certain way. I'm not saying we're right. There's other ways to do it. It's not about right. We look at it a certain way because we use it a certain way, which we find very helpful. And so in our world, we have a thing called the perfect P&L, which is something we developed from taking this notion of like, hey, you can build something in perfect, like you can build something that looks perfect. You may never get there, but you can at least you can try and get there. And I actually learned that playing chess when I was learning how to play chess when I was much younger. There's certain places you can put pieces on the board that give them the best possible outcome. And so I learned that. And the likelihood of you ever achieving that is like almost zero. It's not zero, but it's very low, because you're reacting to what someone else is doing. Like in business, you're reacting to the world. But if you know where they could be, you're going to hopefully make better decisions along the way. And you may not get to perfection, but at least you have a view of where you're trying to go. So that's what the perfect P&L is, and took things like profit first and simple numbers, big profits, great Crabtree, and you took all this information and boiled down something that we thought was pretty helpful. And big part of that is the key drivers of client acquisition fulfillment. You're going to know how much it costs to acquire each of those. So we use this and I'm saying this for a reason, because our definition is driven by the perfect P&L. It's geared around the perfect P&L. So I'm not saying it's right, it's just the way we use it. And so when we look at client acquisition cost, we're looking at, from a perfect P&L standpoint, we're looking at pure paid media cost. So take all your revenue, all the money that you spend on paid traffic, and what percentage is that of total revenue collected. That will give you your client acquisition cost. And there's a ratio there, and that ratio is the same as for an individual, like selling 1 unit or selling 500 units, because it's a percentage, it's the same thing. That's the one way we measure it. But the reality is that's not everything that's included. There's a lot of other things that are included. Because we don't measure any human beings in that. But paid media doesn't exist without human beings. So there is an entire marketing team, either an agency that you're using or yourself, or media buyer or copywriter that comes into play, as well as a sales team that comes into play. So you got those 3 things are at play in terms of client acquisition costs. So if you want to work out strictly what is the cost for you to acquire a client, you're going to use those 3 things. So you're going to say, what is all my paid channels, all my lead gen channel like costs? What all my human resources cost around marketing, media buyers, content writers, copywriters, videographers, whatever you're doing there. And then what is my sales team, total cost of my sales team. And you can combine those together and take that percentage of top line revenue. And that's the most accurate client acquisition cost you're going to get out there. Okay. So that's what we do. So if you want to be 100% correct in client acquisition cost, you're going to take those 3 things. The way we do it is we say, okay, we do them a little bit separately. We say there's a paid channel, and then there's human resources we actually put under fulfillment cost. Okay. Now, funny enough, we built this thing 3.5 years ago. If I had to build it again, I'd probably change it around and do it the other way. One of the reasons we did that is just from a more compliance standpoint, it's a lot easier to manage someone's money if all human resources are in one place. If I scatter your human resources across your P&L, that makes Brian's going to kill me, and other people are going to get unhappy. So that's this conversation of like we're trying to meet between compliance and strategy. So that's some of the things you give up. Is you say, okay, fine, we're gonna keep all human resources in one place. So we call that fulfillment, and we kind of isolate that a little bit like that. So that's getting a little bit technical there. But to me, that's what client acquisition cost is. Client acquisition cost is all paid channels, all your media resources, all your marketing resources, all your sales resources. And then what you want to do is, depending on what type of business you run, you want to identify what are the metrics that you want to aim for in those different things. And that's what you want. And that's where the perfect P&L comes in. It says, okay, well, if that's what it should be is, that's what we say it should be based on our research and knowledge. Everyone's a little bit different. Where am I? Am I there? Am I not there? Am I behind? Am I ahead? And then how do I make decisions to get closer to that outcome?
I think it's interesting to, you talked about early on that, hey, we got to simplify things and in business. And I think that's a good example of something where it's like, there might be a little bit deeper of a thought that we need to have there. But then you start to step back and you say, okay, well, that actually does help you simplify the business if you know the true total cost involved to acquire a client. And you can look from a very high level view of like, okay, well, what's actually happening in the business to get there?
And once you get the high level right, it's like, you can ask anyone, let's say you want to lose weight.
Yeah.
What's the first thing you do? You got to step on a scale and say, well, how much do I weigh? Okay. Well, I weigh X. I don't want to weigh X. I want to weigh Y. Okay, cool. So, someone once told me a GPS only needs 2 things. It needs to know where you want to go and where you are. It's the only 2 things it needs, and it can help you. Okay. So like, that's what you need to do. If your number's too high, then we know we've got to work on it. Now we can go figure out how to work on it. And then we can do a lot of technical analysis and detail. But you can't do that until you start with the simple part of just going, hey, where are you?
Yeah.
So those are numbers. Like those are numbers. If there's 2 numbers to measure in your business, it should be client acquisition and fulfillment. Now, whether you do it the way we do it and say paid and then all human resources, or you say, no, I want paid plus some human resources, and doesn't really matter. The numbers is going to change, but it's the same number at the end of the day. Like you need to measure those. If a business owner is not consistently measuring the percentage of money that they spend on client acquisition, the percentage of money they spend on fulfillment, it is almost impossible to make good decisions. And if you are making good decisions, it's probably a little bit of luck involved and a little bit of situational luck involved. And I'm not saying you can't make good decisions, but it's just so hard to, because it's like you're like blind and trying to make a good decision. This is not going to work. So that we advocate for that full on, like once a week, minimum kind of thing. You should be measuring those to get a gauge of where they're.
So I know a lot of business owners, as they start thinking about that, they get really overwhelmed with metrics and numbers. You know, a lot of times the entrepreneur is coming in as a very creative, visionary type of individual, and they feel like, man, I'm not good with the numbers, or I don't want to have to spend my time doing that. I need to be in creative mode. I need to be out selling. I need to be doing this. What do you feel like is the minimum effective dose, so to speak, of the numbers that people need to be looking at? So what are the core metrics that you feel like, listen, every business owner on here needs to be looking at these numbers on a weekly basis, maybe a monthly basis? What are those things that business owners should be checking themselves on to say, do I know these numbers or not?
Yeah. So we call that, the number I just gave you, client acquisition fulfillment, we call it the golden ratio. Mm-hmm. So if you take client acquisition plus fulfillment, and you work out the ratio of that to top line revenue, we call that the golden ratio. So if someone had to say to me, Adam, you could only ever measure one number ever again in any business, that's the number I'm going to measure.
Okay, wait. I want that again. So you said golden ratio is client acquisition and delivery costs
and fulfillment
combined
together. So put it all together.
Yeah.
And what percentage of revenue is that?
Gotcha.
55 is a really good number.
You said 35?
55. 55% of top line revenue. If you combine all client acquisition costs, whether it's human resources or not, just all client acquisition costs and all human resource costs, you put them all into one. If you can be around 55, you're going to be in a good place. If you're not profitable and it's at 55, then you're a muppet, because you're spending money where it makes no difference. That means your software costs or your travel costs or your stupid costs are too high. Those costs don't make you more money. The only two costs that actually make you money in broader sense is a client acquisition fulfillment. So if they're at 55%, you should be very profitable. You should be doing exceptionally well. Okay. So that's number one. Ideally, you want to break them up. So you want to know individually client acquisition, individually fulfillment, which we've spoken about, because that's going to give you a little bit more insight, but let's just keep it simple. So golden ratio is definitely number one. You just want to look at top line revenue and see, have you hit your goals or not? So I said I wanted to get to 100 and I'm now at 40. Problem. Okay. So you want to know that. You want to know your profit number at the end. Am I decently profitable? And then you want to know your cash flow number. And I think those are probably the four I would say is, if I was tracking someone's business, I would go top line is where we want it to be. What's our golden ratio at? Tick or no tick. Profit margin, tick, no tick. And then is cash flow where I want it to be. That's the four by far. I mean, that's it. If you looked at those four numbers once a week for 8 weeks, I can almost guarantee to you that you'll make better business decisions. Because it's hard not to, because it's staring you in the face.
Right.
It's like the problem is telling you where the problem is. Now the hard part is you've got to go do the work to solve the problem. But as long as you know it's the problem and you're reminding yourself, out of sight, out of mind, remind yourself every single day of the problem, you're going to start doing something to solve the problem. So that's the theory of it, at least.
So I know that for a lot of business owners, thank you, by the way, this is such good stuff. For a lot of business owners, they're going to say, well, crap, my bookkeeper isn't giving me numbers on a weekly basis. How can I possibly go do that? I don't want to go through all the numbers and have to categorize everything and go, all right, top line revenue is easy. Great. I log into my Stripe. I see what's my past week. Cool. For the business that might have, maybe they've got a few more employee costs going on. Maybe they've got a few more software costs. Maybe they've got a few more things going. What do you recommend so that they can look at those numbers in an intelligent way on a weekly basis without their bookkeeper having to give them weekly numbers, if that's maybe not an option for them?
Often fulfillment costs are pretty fixed. Okay, so often your outside of sales commission, but if your sales commission number is high, then you don't have a financial problem. Then there's enough resources in the system that you can get your bookkeeper to do it once a week for you. So we're assuming now that resources are low. We don't want to go and spend more money on bookkeeping. So if that's the assumption, then I'm going, well, surely your fixed costs of fulfillment are pretty fixed. So you kind of know what they are every single month. So that's fine. It doesn't really, the timing of when they hit your bank account or not, relatively irrelevant. You kind of know that number. So you're essentially just tracking acquisition costs. And if you yeah, that may take a little bit more effort. So, hey, you got to maybe take 10 minutes and just go into Facebook or YouTube if that's what you're doing and just pull that information out. You got top line from Stripe or whatever payment processor you're using. You spend 10 minutes to get that acquisition cost. You got your fixed cost of labor. I would just say apply a 15% overhead cost if you really want to, or once a month for the last 4 months, hopefully you've got some numbers, whatever that average is, just apply that average and you got your bank account. So if it takes you more than half an hour once a week, I'll be surprised. So it shouldn't take long. Where it will take long is if the variables I just said are a lot more variable. Once a week. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah, you brought something up, Adam. So first off, thank you so much on that and the insight on how you look at it. And I think if you're listening to this, go back and listen to that a few times of exactly what to do. I know you're listening to this, it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. Really go back and listen to it, because Adam, the next thing I want to dive into, if you're okay with this, is you just laid out what we should be looking at, right? You laid out we should be looking at the golden ratio every single week. You should be looking at your top line revenue. You should be able to separate, ideally, your fulfillment and your cost per acquisition. Be able to see all that stuff. Here's what we see, and we're in similar boats. That's why I love having you on here, because I feel like we're in the same team, which is just really improving the financial fitness of business owners, really making them smarter with this. And I've just noticed something like this with a course is really tough, because people know it's just like, hey man, you're overweight. Can you think of 2 ways to lose weight? I really think 100 out of 100 people could come up with, I should eat less or better, and I should exercise more. We go, great. So it's not totally an education or awareness issue. Like, you're pretty aware of what to do. The hardest part is doing it. And you've worked with so many business owners who are really successful in so many aspects of their life. But it's just like this one, like for a lot of owners, and we've been there, where it's just like, it's really hard to just put your attention on this thing. And I'm just curious, do you see also, a lot of like mental blocks, and I don't mean that in a negative connotation, but like, I'm nervous to address this, especially if they hit a big size or a big scale, and it's like,
look, I mean, but like the easiest way to solve it is to pay someone else to do it and hold them accountable to do it. And, that's where we come in. That's what we do for people. So it's like, well, the easiest way to solve any of these things is to go pay, like, if you want to lose weight, go get a fitness coach or a dietitian and pay them money and tell them to message you every day and kick your ass, and you'll do the things you need to do. Okay. Yeah. So the ultimate solution is you just pay for it to get done. Like, pay for it to get done. Get the people who are good at it, who can do it and do it for you, get them to do it for you, and then you can tick the box. But a lot of what we are saying here, if I'm correct, is that, okay, if you're under-resourced to do that, then it's a little bit harder. Okay. And, unfortunately, those, if you have a little bit more resources, you can pay for that and get that accountability. And so, even those who have all the resources still have the same problem. They still want to avoid it. They don't want to talk about it because whatever it is. And so, but then at least you're paying someone to kind of knock on your head every now and then and say, wake up and do your thing. If you're 20 grand a month, 15 grand a month in revenue, and you don't have a ton of resources, you can't go afford to pay $1,000 more a month to get all these little things done. That becomes a little self-discipline around, hey, what am I prepared to do and not prepared to do here? And that is tough. And I think, I'm not a high performance coach. I've coached enough things in my life, like sport and stuff like that, to be able to talk a little bit about it. But to me, intrinsic motivation is the key thing. Anyone who knows anything about rugby would know New Zealand, the nation, is probably the world leader in rugby. And I was fortunate enough, I spent some time there in 2014, quite a long time in New Zealand, from one of their teams learning about coaching. And one of their key metrics to identifying young talent is intrinsic motivation. They call it, if you want to become an All Black, All Blacks are their national team. And it's one of the questions, so they've got these rubrics that they use for under 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, trying to get them through the system. And on every single one of those things, they ask the assessor or the coach or something is, do you believe this person is intrinsically motivated to become an All Black? Okay. And I feel like it's just such a powerful thing. It's very subjective, but it's such a powerful thing because, what does that mean? That means that you're prepared to do what it takes. And what it takes is what it takes. It could be anything, could be something, whatever it is, to get the outcome. And so that's what you probably got to truly check that box, is if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to make this work and you're not doing this stuff and you find that hard to do, you find it hard to take half an hour or take an hour out of your day and focus on not sitting on Facebook, scrolling through and trying to find the next client, but doing, which is not a bad thing, which is client acquisition, that's hugely important, but spending some time in your finances. To me, the question is, you got to check your intrinsic motivation. Like, how motivated are you then to truly get the outcome you want? And I think that's a powerful thing, and I think that's something that everyone should be thinking about. And people have often asked me about, where should I invest money? I'm not a wealth guy, so I don't know why people ask me this, but they do. Where should I invest money and all that kind of stuff? And I always go back to this piece. And I pretty lately have I been doing some more crypto stuff, but I don't really like it. There's like nothing about it that like kind of excites me. And so what I've realized is I could have been a bit of money and maybe made a little bit, lost a little bit. Okay. But I'm wasting my time because I don't have enough intrinsic motivation. I don't have enough interest, desire, and to actually make this thing work. The stories of zero to hero with little effort don't really exist. And if they do, go take all that money and play the lottery, because just odds are the same. Okay, you're literally odds are the same. Okay, so the people that have made it, they've done things. And sometimes to them, it's not even work. To them, it doesn't feel like work because they're so intrinsically motivated, they're working. So they're not going to sit on Facebook and say, you know what, I had the most stressful day. I worked my ass off. Because they're like loving it. They're loving life. Because they're so intrinsically motivated to do it. They don't equate the two to each other. That's how you make things work, is you got to put the work in. You got to do the stuff to make it work. And so that would be my answer. It's like, if you feel that way, what you've got to check is intrinsic motivation. And that doesn't mean that you're never going to succeed. It just means you got to think about how to succeed. So what does truly motivate you? What is that intrinsic motivation factor? Go try and spend more time there, because that's probably going to be the lane that you want to be in. That's going to get you further on the path. And even if that is saying, well, I still want to build a business, I still have a vision. Well, then we've got to think about partnerships. You've got to think about bringing people in who can help you. You've got to think about people who can broaden that scope, who have some other intrinsic motivations to make this thing work. And then you can say to me, well, again, I don't have the resources and stuff to do that. And I'll say, okay, well then if your intrinsic motive is still a visionary, then you've got to go build it in such a way. Even if you're forgetting about your finances for 4 months, go get to 50K in revenue. And then take those resources and invest in the next part to get to the solidify. Like, those are the things you can do. If you're trying to do it all at once and you don't have that intrinsic motivation, it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I think that's great, Adam. And I think I love the realism of that answer. It's not just you'll get better at it. It's like, no, do you want to do it? Like, and if you want to do it, you're going to find a way to do it. If not, you need to build in such a way that's going, like, you can't ignore it. Right. I wrote an email out to our list today. Like, it's really hard to, like, if you ignore it, the consequences could be dire, AKA jail, huge fines, things like that. It's not like somebody's in school just like, hey, Adam, sorry that, we'll just pat you on the back and hopefully next time, you'll do better. Like, yeah, you have to address it. You have to be on top of it. And I think the way that you said that was super spot on. I think that's where a lot of our people are. I know we have some people who are doing really, really well, but a lot of them are in that 15 to 40K a month. And they're in this, do I figure it out myself? Do I get accountability? Obviously we're going to argue for always getting accountability if it's a problem in your business. But with that in mind, to me, it's like I know you said you're not a high performance coach, but you run a successful business. And I think it's something that can easily be overlooked. And so I think that explanation was awesome. I did have one thing, Adam. I told somebody we had like a list of questions we sent out and people sent us, and the number one question we got, and I don't know if this is from your tax day, so maybe you could pull from Brian on this as well. The number one question we got was, what's the weirdest write-off you've ever seen someone write off for their business that you can think of? And if you need some time, we'll ask another question, but I think I don't do a lot of taxes.
Yeah. I don't do a lot of taxes. I mean, people, you can write off boats and planes and all that kind of stuff. It all depends how you structure things. But yeah, I mean, I appreciate that question. I'm not going to give you a good answer because Brian is probably going to be able to give you a good answer.
We'll see if we can get Brian
say
on.
though, I would say this, that if that's the most common question, it answers some other questions for me. Because you're like, well, why does that matter?
Yeah.
Like, to me, that doesn't matter. To me, that's like completely irrelevant in the world of like, a tax write-off's not going to make you more money.
Yeah.
So.
But what if it's the end of the year and I've made all this money, and so in order to avoid taxes, I got to go spend an extra $50K?
I also like to cut off my nose to spite my face. I also love that. That's a great way to run your business. Look, and I'm not saying those things aren't good. Like there are many arguments that you say like, hey, if spend things at the end of the year, if you know you're going to spend them, and if they're viable,
you're going to do it anyway.
But you know, I'm going to throw my wife under the bus here a little bit, but it's like, no, but it was 30% off. Well, you still had to pay 70% to buy the thing. Okay. So it's great if it's 30% off and you needed it, but just because it's 30% off, that doesn't create the need for it. And that's a problem. That's the same kind of problem is, if I write things off, I'll reduce my taxes. Well, yes, if you need it.
You'll just make less money.
But don't make that the reason why you need it. And like that's just scary for me.
I love that last line. Don't make that the reason you need it, which I think all comes down to sort of encapsulate the conversation. It's like, look at your business from a realistic lens. And Will and I talk about this a lot. Your business is simply a vehicle for building wealth for you, for serving the greater good and solving problems that people have. And, it's like, look, do you actually need that for the reason that you need it? Or are you making up a reason to need the thing? And we just see so much that people make decisions that have no basis in reality. And it's just like, I need to spend this money because I'm a business owner. And that's what it means to grow a business is I just spend lots of money and I reinvest and I reinvest and I reinvest. And you're like, dude, you're not taking money from the business ever. Like, what are you doing? It's like, I gotta have a dog so that I can feed the dog food. And somehow it spits out more dog food. So I just got to keep feeding it. It's like, you're not getting anything out of this. And it's really sad to see on the one hand, but also then it really makes you recognize why so few business owners actually stay in business profitably for a long time.
Key drivers. Just put the list down of what are the key. We had a high performance guy come and talk to our team a while ago, and he said, you got to make two lists. You got to make a to-do list, and you got to make a make money list. And you got to find a way to spend way more time on your make money list than on your to-do list. Same kind of analogy here. It's like, what are the key drivers in your business? What makes you money? There's very few pieces of software out there that help you make more money. A lot of pieces of software make your life easier. A lot of pieces of software may save you some time. Not very many of them actually make you more money. And when you boil that down and you go, well, if it's not going to truly make me more money, should I be spending money on it? Yeah. And if you use that lens, I can tell you now, most people would spend considerably less on the software part of their business. But we need it because everyone's got it. And, when I'm making bazillions, I need this piece of software. So I better get it right now when I'm making nothing. Seen it too many times.
Oh man, I think that's Adam. We want to be respectful of your time, and I think that's a great way to kind of sum things up. Of make a to-do list, make make money list. I think for so many of our business owners, they're at a place where, just like you said earlier, it's do you have the money to solve this problem? If not, you need to go make more money. You need to go.
You don't have a problem.
You don't have a problem. I was trying to think
you got the problem.
Yeah,
you actually don't have the problem.
I think the way you said it was so well said, which is if you're not even making enough money, you don't have a tax problem, right? So don't worry about a tax problem. Go worry about to make enough money to have a tax problem. And so it's one of the big takeaways.
Like, I would far rather overpay the IRS a little bit of money than not owe the IRS anything. Because on the one hand, it means I'm actually doing something meaningful. On the other hand, I've done nothing.
You have a
So
great hobby.
just go and just make more money. If people pay you money.
Oh, Adam, this has been awesome, man. I just in summary, some things that we covered today that I think were really powerful. Kind of understanding your cost per acquisition, understanding the golden ratio, what to do on your weekly meeting, the things that you should be checking. So if you miss that, go back and listen to that, as well as kind of understanding, are you intrinsically motivated to do this? I think that's a really big thing that we don't talk about. And sort of, you have to face the reality to yourself. Am I intrinsically motivated? I could tell Alex for sure that I was not intrinsically motivated to understand our finances. Alex was.
You don't have to be. You don't have to be. Someone else can be, but you just got to, self-awareness is the trick. If you know that, then you can make it work.
The cool thing is, and two, with having someone like that, building in the habit, it's actually instilled a little bit more intrinsic motivation because I do understand it now. And I do see the power of it, that it's turned around, which is really great. Adam, if anyone, people who are listening to this, what's the best way to follow you, to get in touch with Clever Profits, learn more about what you guys are doing? Where would you point them to?
cleverprofits.com. It's probably our website. I think there are buttons on there that you can speak to people if you need to. And if there aren't, then someone in our marketing department needs to get fired. Facebook's great. I mean, I'm on Facebook. Just, we're human beings. Just send me a message and say what's up, and we'd love to chat, and we can chat. And YouTube channel, Clever Profits. Everything I've spoken about here in infinitely more details in some form of a YouTube video somewhere on our YouTube page. So they're not very long, my YouTube videos. So you're welcome. If you want to understand more of the golden ratio, whatever it is, I would just go and watch some of those. Keep an open mind. Just because I said it doesn't mean it's true. It's just the way we do it. There's many ways to skin a cat or do that. There's many things. Just the principles are what matter to me. Key drivers, do things that make money. How you do the rest is relatively irrelevant as long as you stay focused on the main thing. But yeah, if you want to get hold of us, that's the best way to do it. And we'd happily chat to you. And if we can help you, great. And if we can't, we'll hopefully steer you in a direction where someone can.
Awesome. We appreciate your time, Adam. I can't recommend their YouTube channel enough. It's been one of my favorites to stay up to date with. So go follow them at Clever Profits. Reach out to Adam Rundle on Facebook or LinkedIn or anywhere where he's active. And guys, as always, take care of your money, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.